Do you know who these guys are? You do. Somebody just whispered that it's Jim Hughes and Joe Seneca. All right. They are starting off this segment, and then we're going to go back to our schedule. And we are moving along, and I appreciate how you're helping us move along. We're ready to go.
Truth in advertising. Unfortunately, over the years, I have been labeled the following: the Dr. Kevorkian of the New Jersey economy, the official Garden State doomster, the Prince of Pessimism, and worst of all, the nattering nabob of economic negativism. So, all unfair, but I regret to inform you that I will do nothing for the balance of the afternoon that will jeopardize my hard-earned reputation as New Jersey's economic killjoy. Bottom line, demography is destiny, but that destiny is linked to the economy. And it's really a cause and effect relationship. People follow jobs, and jobs follow people. Thus, a strong economy will make New Jersey a demographic destination, but a weak economy will spur demographic deceleration. So, since it's well recognized that I am the only totally objective person in the state of New Jersey, let me start off with a benchmarking exercise to provide an objective assessment of the state's economic strength. And this is basically data that's available to anybody from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development or the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Unemployment, unfortunately, this is not a pleasant task. In the understatement of the day, this has not been the decade of employment growth in New Jersey. Brief perspective. In the final 2 decades of the 20th century, 1980 to 1990 and 1990 to the year 2000, New Jersey gained on average 437,000 private sector jobs per decade. 437,000 private sector jobs per decade. Since December 2000, which was the peak of the last business cycle, we've lost 14,900 private sector jobs. To reiterate, we've lost 14,900 private sector jobs between December 2000 and September of 2008, with significant losses expected over the next 18 months as the national economy sinks deeper into recession. Now, the reason for the disappointing loss so far in this decade was not the 2000 to 2003 employment contraction, which was our last recession, and it was a mild downturn. But it was really due to the weak 2003 to 2007 employment expansion, which followed. And during that 4-year period, New Jersey's job base totally and absolutely refused to grow at a pace anywhere near that accompanies a typical economic expansion in the state. During the previous 2 expansions, 1982 to 1989 and 1992 to the year 2000, New Jersey added 74,000 private sector jobs per year on average. 74,000 private sector jobs per year on average during those 2 expansions. And that's a reasonable estimate, first estimate, of what we should have gotten in the 2004 to 2007 period. But during 2004, 2005, 2006, all expansion years, New Jersey gained on average just 23,000 private sector jobs per year. So that's less than 1/3 of what we should have gotten, 23,000 versus 74,000. To put that in perspective, North Carolina, a key competitor, and roughly the same size as New Jersey, they gained 92,000 private sector jobs per year in 04, 05, and 06, quadruple New Jersey's performance. Our number person out there, Tom, told us to take a full 10 minutes to do this presentation. Following those 3 subpar years, in 2007, New Jersey unexpectedly and surprisingly flatlined. Unfortunately, we flat out flatlined. We only gained 3,700 private sector jobs in 07. Now, to put that performance in perspective, New York State, led by Wall Street Financial Services, gained 86,000 private sector jobs in 2007. During the entire 03 to 07 period, employment expanded. The nation's private sector base grew by 7%. New Jersey's grew by only 2.6%. 7% versus 2.6% advantage U.S. Now, the good news is, after lagging the economy, the national economy, for 4 straight years, we finally started to track the nation quite closely in 2007. Bad news, too, just as we started to track the nation cratered. During the first 9 months of 2008, the nation lost 969,000 private sector jobs. Now, that looks like the start of a full metal jacket national meltdown. And during the first 9 months of 2008, New Jersey lost 18,700 private sector jobs. So we're both heading in the wrong direction at a rapid pace. To badly paraphrase quotes from the old Monty Python episode about the dead parrot, which many of you are too young to remember, the economy went ex-growth. Growth expired and went on to meet its maker. Growth ceased to be. Worst case, this may turn out to be New Jersey's lost economic decade. It could be the first decade since the 1930s, the era of the Great Depression, where we had fewer private sector jobs at the end of the decade than we had at the beginning. In any case, New Jersey's post-2000 metrics leave a lot to be desired. What they suggest is that during the current decade, New Jersey has gone from economic juggernaut to economic afterthought. Consequently, we've gone from demographic lion to demographic lamb. Now, speaking of demographic lions, let me now turn this over to Joe Seneca.
Okay, Jim, thank you. The demography that follows that employment profile is interesting and important, and I want to present some basic demographic statistics that are available publicly from the U.S. Bureau of Census. There's been some discussion about the demographic trends in New Jersey and whether, in fact, we're losing population, gaining population, and so forth. And it's important to get the facts correctly. This is equivalent to making sure that there's not a global warming denying. So these are publicly available data. First, New Jersey's population increased total population by 3.2% from the year 2000 to the year 2007, and that represented a gain of 291,000 people. As a benchmark, the nation's population growth rate over the same period was 7.2%, more than twice the rate of growth of New Jersey. New Jersey's slower population growth is a result of a dramatic deceleration in its annual population gains since 2000. That's when the deceleration began, when in that year the state added 79,000 people. Over the next 5 years, the net annual increase in population steadily declined, plus 63,000 in 2003, plus 56,000 in 2004, plus 33,000 in 05, 21,000 in 06, and 19,000 in 07, the latest available year. That 6-year period of declining population growth is one of the slowest demographic phases in New Jersey since World War II and coincides precisely with the slow employment growth that Jim has described. Population change is the sum of 3 components as measured by the Census Bureau. The natural rate of increase, that's births minus deaths, net internal migration, the number of people moving into New Jersey from other states minus the number of New Jersey residents moving to other states, and the third component, net international migration from abroad into New Jersey. New Jersey's natural rate of population increase, births minus deaths, has been positive and totaled 291,000 people from the years 2000 to 2007, and the annual gain has been stable at about 40,500 people per year. Thus, the key reason behind New Jersey's slowing total population growth over this time has been the acceleration of net internal outmigration since 2002. That is, more New Jersey residents moving to other states than residents of other states moving into New Jersey, a net outflow over that period, 2000 to 2007, of 377,000 people. However, that net internal outflow of people was, interestingly, in statistical coincidence, just offset exactly almost to the person by a net inflow of international migration of plus 377,000 people. As a result of this slowing population growth, still growth, New Jersey fell out of the top 10 states in total population. North Carolina, a key competitor state economically, became the 10th most populous state in the year 2005, and New Jersey fell out of the top 10, first time ever, to the position of 11th. It is interesting to note that North Carolina, over that same period, had a net internal in-migration of 500,000 people. The reasons for migration are many and complex, and people who move can be pulled by economic opportunity and lower housing costs, or pushed with respect to those same factors the other way, loss of jobs and higher housing and other costs, and are also affected by their position in the life cycle, retirees versus young workers. But one obvious factor is housing costs. In 2007, the latest census data available, same measure across all the states, consistently measured, New Jersey had the second highest annual housing carrying costs in the country for owner-occupied homes with a mortgage. Mortgage costs, property taxes, utility costs, etc., over $27,000 per year, 57% above the national average, while North Carolina's, for example, was 10% below the national average. In terms of ethnicity, the state's population continues to experience profound changes. The state's white population fell by 3.2%, or by 180,000 people between 2000 and 2007, and the share of the white population in the state's total fell from 66% in 2000 to just below 62% of New Jersey's 8.7 million people in 2007. The state's black population increased by 4.5%, or by nearly 49,000, and basically maintained its population share at just over 13%. The state's Hispanic population increased by 24%, or by 264,000 people, and the Hispanic share of the total state's population rose to just below 16% from 13%. The Asian population of New Jersey increased by a very large 35%, or nearly 167,000 people, and the Asian share of the total population of the state rose to about 7.5% from 5.7%. New Jersey's traditional role as a gateway state to the country has been reasserted in this decade, and nearly 20%, 1 in every 5 New Jerseyans, is a foreign-born resident of New Jersey. This ranks New Jersey third among all the states, trailing only California and New York, and is considerably above the national average of about 13%. Thus, our slowing population growth is also a total population that is becoming more diverse and more international, creating another set of opportunities and challenges for public policy and the state's economy. Thank you.
All right, we're back moving through the list of best and brightest we've invited. The next person on our list to speak with you is the managing editor of the Courier-Post, and that is Joyce Gabriel. Our friends in Beijing and other places that we appreciate them sticking with us. We know that traditionally we lose some folks in this event after lunch, but now that we are international in scope, it becomes much less important to us the number of you that are here, although we're delighted you're here. But we or just thinking we just have to simultaneously translate this into Farsi and Mandarin and whatever. All right, Joyce.
Hi. That was a perfect setup for what I want to talk to you about today, because my idea isn't so much outside of the box as we really need to pay attention to this. And the issue is we need to reform the government in the state of New Jersey. We need to reform it in terms of size. We need to reform it in terms of the sense of entitlement. I've sat here this afternoon, and I've listened to one new tax idea after another. And I think what we hear, you all heard the results of the Monmouth University Gannett, New Jersey poll this morning about what people think. They think government is broken here. They say property tax is too high, cost of living too high, too much wasteful government spending, health care costs out of control, and there's political corruption. And this is such a well-educated state that we really need to all get involved. It's not just for government to do, but for all of us to do, to take a look at what government should be and what it should look like, lest we become like California, where they almost had to borrow $7 billion just to keep the lights on and pay the state workers. I think that there are some possible remedies to the problems in New Jersey government. One of them is no new taxes. Can't have a new tax till you get rid of an old tax. It's kind of like when your kids come to you and say, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and you say, okay, well, what are you willing to give up? We haven't gotten to the what are you willing to give up part yet, and I really think that we need to do that. And our readers, in letters to the editor, they're heartbreaking. They're letters of people who love to live here, who have to leave here because they are being forced out of their homes by their property taxes. And so that's one thing, no new taxes. Elected Attorney General. I am a child of New Jersey and then left here for a number of years and lived in Connecticut for a number of those years. And I have to tell you that having a separately elected Attorney General would change our lives here. People like Joe Lieberman have been elected Attorney Generals, some who didn't do so well, but Joe Lieberman is a great example. He was the AG in Connecticut. And having that independent force means that you have an independent force in terms of what's going on within the state. If an AG is an appointee, you can come up with a situation where the AG's attorneys are paying outside legal bills in something that another branch of the government is involved in. And the AG should really be for the people, not for any other political elected official. Okay, total transparency in how things are done in government, from the local level on up through the state level. Everything should be online, from every agency to every meeting. Meetings should be posted with agendas 48 hours before they occur. They have to upload all of their information and documents. They should have the state checkbook should be online, and so should the towns and the counties. As they're writing those checks, we should be seeing what they're writing and who to. And we can all be a part of this process. Man who works for Gannett, New Jersey, Bob Engel, some of you have heard about him, has written a book called The Soprano State. And people have taken that as a little Bible, and they've gotten pay-to-play laws, stricter ones initiated in Cherry Hill and Washington Township. So I would just say we have to start reforming at home so that we don't lose population and we don't lose our place in the country. So that's my thought.
Here. All right. You're in favor of the idea of no new taxes unless something else gives. That's a 5-1. I think we're going to let the people in China start to vote this afternoon. That will be a little bit of a time lag. All right, you're voting, and the survey says you like that idea. Next idea. We've talked about an elected attorney general. I'm going to pass on that one, but total transparency, or let's try to make it more vivid. The online checkbook. As your money's being spent, you get to see it being spent, and all the other things that Joyce said to go with it. 5-1, 5 you like it, 1 you don't. You're voting, and survey says you like that a lot. All right. Thank you, Joyce. Our next speaker is the Executive Director of New Jersey Sierra Club, Jeff Tittle.
Jeff Tittle, New Jersey Sierra Club. I'm here to try to talk about an issue that I think our president, summed up best when he said strategery. When you look at New Jersey, we have many disjointed programs, many laws and regulations that have evolved at different times depending on what was either politically hot that year, what sometimes was expedient. We tend to get a lot of environmental laws passed in New Jersey in legislative years. And that's actually a good thing because it helps put pressure so they can actually focus at a change. But because of that, I think when you look at New Jersey, we have a very disjointed system of rules, regulations, and laws that are all over the place. I call the Department of Environmental Protection the Department of Eventual Permits because if you have enough time, money, political connections, you'll get your permits no matter how bad your project is. And it also brings us around to, the lack of having planners and planning positions in government. We have politicians and policy positions. We don't need wonks, but we need people who can actually understand governance and the blending of the two. That you need to understand politics to help get policy done, but you also need to understand policy if you want governance to happen. And I think that's one of the things that has been missing. And so I just wanted to talk about New Jersey real quick as Hughes and Seneca can depress you. I can depress you a little bit too. New Jersey is number one in the nation in the miles of stream segments that are considered impaired for pollution. We're the only state in the country where every county is considered impaired for ground level ozone. We're number one in the loss of land or open spaces percentage of over land to development, and we're number one in Superfund sites. And the reason we're number one in Superfund sites is that we had first choice. California got lawyers. But when you look at the state overall, our population per square mile is denser than China, India, Japan, and the only thing denser is the State House with politicians that just don't get it. But when you think about where we can go and what we should be doing, and again, it gets back to the idea of strategic thinking and planning. We've allowed the city of Newark to give away its water supply to the suburbs as a quick fix for its budget, so they're now running out of water. We've allowed Jersey City to get to run water lines that actually for developments that are polluting their own water supplies. We have made conscious decisions to reward bad planning by giving you road widenings if you overdevelop, or if you pollute your groundwater, we'll give you sewer and water lines and the taxpayers will pay for it. And so what we have to do in the state is refocus our energies, and I'm going to leave with three suggestions. One, the state plan is a policy fraud and hasn't worked, and what we need to do is scrap it and go to a system where we actually have growth boundaries, and within those growth boundaries we have a hierarchical and strategic planning that's involved so that Bayonne doesn't become a subdivision, that the former port there becomes a working port where we need to expand our ports. We need to make sure that we clean up our contaminated sites and we put the resources there. DEP used to have 270 people and 12,000 contaminated sites. 14 years ago, we now have 20,000 contaminated sites and only about 155 people. So we have to put those resources in to clean up those sites. Third is that we need to do our environmental permitting and reviews up front. California, Vermont, other states have an environmental quality review process where you come in and you get your permits up front. First, you look at the entire site holistically, not a piecemeal approach where you're looking at the cleanup, crossing a stream, filling in a well, and you look at the entire site. Can this project be built in a way that stays out of the environmentally sensitive features? Can we then mitigate for those disturbances? Can we do it in a way that will promote sound planning and transportation? And they come to the head of the line. And I think that's something that we need, is to have real planning involved.
Stay here, Jeff. Okay. All right, the first thing, the state plan, scrap it and substitute the concept of growth boundaries. You're in favor of that? That's a 5. You're not? It's a 1. You're voting. And Marie's survey says? You're not in favor of that. Okay. Number 2, we have the idea of cleaning up contaminated sites, finding the resources to switch around the diminishing number of people assigned to the growing number of tasks in terms of cleaning up contaminated sites. So more resources applied toward that goal. You are in favor or not. You are voting. Survey says. Wow, look at that. It's the first stepping stone of the day. That is pretty interesting. All right. And finally, doing the permitting and the environmental reviews up front as opposed to whenever. That's not a fair summation, but you get the idea. And so you are voting, and you are in favor of that or not. Survey says you are definitely in favor of that. Thanks, Jeff. Last speaker in this segment is somebody whose name I'm sure you've heard if you've never met him. He is the mayor of Collingswood, which is one of the great economic successes in southern New Jersey, but he is also a master strategist on the legal side with respect to all aspects of economic development. Jim Maley.
Hi, Michael. Some ideas to climb out of the morass from the local level. It's all about property taxes. Most everything I've heard today, I can trace it back. It's 6 degrees of separation. It all goes back to property taxes. And I give you this analogy. If I had a company and I made socks, and my only revenue producer was socks, what we have in New Jersey is laws that say that I can only make white socks for left feet. I can only charge $2 a sock, and I can only make 200 of them a year. And that's really what it's like in all on the county and the local level of government, is that we can only collect revenue from properties, and we have all of this whole state regulatory and federal regulatory scheme that stops where you can build things, where you can build buildings for legitimate reasons. But it's just we're at cross purposes. If the only way that local governments and county governments can stay in business is to sell socks, then there's got to be some flexibility in what socks you can sell. And that's why I think that the things that I'm suggesting, there's a few of them. Number one, at the state level, I think we need to cut the legislature in half. I think that we need fewer man hours. We've guys who are, everybody wants to have a record. Everybody wants a lot of bills they've introduced when they run, and we're just doing things that are paying attention to the capillaries, and we're not going for the jugular. And I think I think we need to reduce the size, not just of the administration, and we need to reduce the size within our legislature so we focus on just what's important. At the local level, we have to have abilities to control costs. We have all these caps and artificial laws that say we have to stop at certain levels, we can't charge people more, and yet our costs don't have those controls. We can only increase property taxes 4% a year, but my health care goes up more than that, my gas goes up more than that, my pension costs go up way more than that. Let us have some control on those costs. My suggestion is we've got to move from defined benefit pension plans to defined contribution plans. I know the state won't do it, but you got to give the locals and the counties the option for new employees to change the system. Every company in America has done it. We have to do it. It is the pink elephant in the room. We've already gotten notice for next year. Our pension contribution is going up $200,000. 15,000 people. I haven't gotten to November yet. I'm 200 in the hole from next year. But I'm supposed to control costs. I'm the one that's the evil one because we're raising property taxes. You've also got to give us ability to use other revenue streams. The no new taxes is great, but let us use other revenue streams. Get off of the property taxes. I don't like having Mrs. McGillicuddy come in and tell me she's got to move and sell her house, but I got to be able to pay the cops every year. They're looking for more. The health care providers are looking for more. Give us the opportunity to use other revenue streams in order to, and let our people decide whether or not we should stick around the next time we're up, but let us have other options of revenue streams in order to make it work. Finally, I'll just tell you that there's a lot of talk about change, this year in the election, but change has got to be our routine. I mean, that's why I think it is with us that change is the routine. Got to constantly be looking at what we're doing, fixing it up, and changing it. That's it.
All right. Hang on a second.
Go ahead.
All right. You want to cut the legislature in half? You're voting?
They're not here yet, right?
No. Survey says that Collingswood will be getting no money from the legislature this year because the half that are staying, no. Okay. So you got two-thirds of the people on your side, Jim. The ability to control costs at a local level, I'm going to just reduce that to the change from defined benefit to defined contribution, just to make it easier. So you are in favor of that, 5-1 on that scale. Survey says you're wildly in favor of that, 95%. All right, that's one of the big winners of the day. And the ability to use other revenue streams if you want us to get off the property tax. You want to give us an example real quick?
Wage tax, user tax, whatever. Let me tax people walking down the street, but something that's not as regressive as property.
All right, you got the idea, 5-1. You're voting. In Beijing, survey says. Okay, they like that, 64%. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Michael.
I lied to you earlier. We're not at the end of a segment. That was my mistake. The next person in this segment is the president of New Jersey Future, Peter Kasselbach.
Well, I have a very long list, but I know my board of directors would like me to stay on message here a little bit. So I think the most important thing we have to do is we have to get serious about land use in New Jersey. It has to do with where we grow and where we develop. You've heard that we're the most densely populated state in New Jersey. We're also the most developed state in New Jersey. Does that mean we should stop developing and we should stop growing? Not really. I think the first thing is we have to rethink about what the term growth is and how we define growth. There's two definitions. One is expansion. The other is evolution. We've been expanding. We need to start thinking about how we evolve. If you want to think of an example as a forest continues to expand until it runs into obstacles that it can't expand beyond, like we are in New Jersey with our development. Then the forest starts to evolve. Species take over, we start to regenerate. That's the kind of thinking we need to be doing in New Jersey when we refer to land use. The second thing is we need to elevate land use planning to the same level of seriousness that other departments are, like the Department of Environmental Protection, like housing, like transportation. Not only should it be raised to that level of seriousness, but it should be used to coordinate these other activities, not be behind those other activities as we currently are doing. The third thing is to update the state plan in a way that not only gives it real teeth, but gives it real direction so that people on the ground know what we're talking about, where we want to have things happen, where we want to direct investments, what kind of rules and regulations we should be using so we get the outcomes that we're hoping for. And finally, it's lining up our state regulations and our state investments behind where we want to grow, how we want to evolve as a state. Right now, we're completely disjointed, as one of the earlier speakers had said. On one hand, we talk about great policies, great recommendations, how we want to move forward, but then we have these different state departments that then don't line up their rules, regulations, or their investments to match the plans that are on the table. So it's time that we start taking land use seriously in New Jersey, and we can't afford not to. Thanks.
Hang out, Peter. All right, so the concept of redefining growth, the expansion versus the evolution model, we will accept as an interesting premise. We'll move on to the elevating land planning to what I would call department status. That's not exactly what Peter said, but for the purposes of trying to give you something concrete, raising it to that level. And don't vote against that idea just because you don't want more departments, but giving it that level of, I guess, clout, seriousness, whatever. All right, so you're voting. Survey says you like that idea. All right. Everybody's in favor of updating the state plan because, in fact, the state plan is honored only in the breach. But direction and teeth, those are good things, but I don't know that they're actionable by you right now in terms of a vote. You'd all vote yes, as you would for motherhood. Finally, aligning state regulations and state investments with state thoughts on where and how growth should occur as opposed to having them be random relative to one another. I think you're going to vote in favor of that, but let's see what the vote total turns out to be. Remember, the people in Beijing are voting also. Survey says you're wildly in favor of it. Thank you, Peter. All right, there's a responsibility which is devolving upon you who are left in the room. The level of applause is going down because the number of people in the room is going down. Therefore, to be fair to the people who have been stuck with slots toward the end of the day or who have requested slots toward the end of the day, it is now incumbent upon you to raise the decibel level. All right? Next speaker is the Executive Director of the Salem County United Way, Rebecca Purchase. Good.
I've been sitting so long I wasn't sure I could walk. Although I'm worried about the environmental impact of both groups, I would like to invite you to join with your Wooden Arrow Society, the Down Jersey Lantern Wick Weaving Guild, in sharing some best practices anytime you would like to do that.
If I get funding, I'm happy to share.
We can work that out. I'm a very eclectic reader. I'd rather buy a book than dessert. And while you think that might be healthy, I'd rather read than exercise. I developed a love of reading from my family, friends, and a handful of exceptional teachers, one in high school and the rest in college. It seems appropriate then during the presidential era here to read David McCullough's biography of John Adams. Adams was a short, balding man with bad teeth from Massachusetts. He had an exquisite mind and, of course, an incredible wife. His values showed up in our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and in the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Constitution contained a declaration of Adams' faith in education. He believed that the survival of the rights and liberties of the people depended on the spread of wisdom, knowledge, and virtue among all people. He wrote in his diary, "I must judge for myself, but how can I judge? How can any man judge unless his mind has been opened and enlarged by reading?" Adams declared that the duty of government was not only to provide education, but to cherish the interests of literature and science, indeed a full range of arts, commerce, manufactures, and natural sciences. I propose we put the cherish in education. Ray Bradbury says in his book Fahrenheit 451, it is not about censorship. You don't have to burn books to destroy culture. Just get people to stop reading them. I think we need to go beyond duty when we talk about schools. I think we need to connect our schools, our libraries, our museums, our nonprofit organizations that care about our communities, put them all together in partnership and networking, even in sense of sharing buildings, and put that cherish back so that we, as Miss Brody says, start putting old heads on new bodies. Finally, I just finished Wicked. What a wonderful book. And Maguire's Wicked Witch of the West observes that the people around her were constantly pawing at the edge of events, reacting instead of acting, mourning the past and praying for the future instead of stirring up the present. We can't start with a clean slate, but 1,000 of us who are part of Leadership New Jersey ought to be able to do a pretty good job of stirring up the present. So starting today, I propose that we go do that. Thank you.
You don't have to stay. All right. Next speaker on the agenda is Greg Edwards. You read him regularly in New Jersey, in NJ Biz. He is the president of the Center for Policy Research of New Jersey. Greg. You're doing good on the applause, but I think you still got to ramp it up a little bit, though. Have a cookie and ramp it up some more.
Don't bother. I'm used to not getting applause. And by the way, news from the outside world, while you were sitting here, the Phillies won the pennant. And McCain and Obama decided to settle their debate with a duel somewhere on the football field at Hofstra. By disposition, I am conservative, which is also to say that I tend to treat plans for big change in a highly skeptical way. And when I do think about change, I tend to think of it in an incremental sort of way. I will say, though, that this notion of starting from scratch I find to be very seductive. So here I go. I think the one government function that deserves more than any other to be completely brought down and rebuilt is our public education system. In my own view, we have children who for generations have been imprisoned in failing public schools, and we do absolutely nothing about it. We pat ourselves on the back for spending a lot of money, but we want to do nothing to hold those schools and school districts accountable for how they spend that money. Even our so-called very good schools, I think, for what they spend, produce very little in terms of results. Student achievement is relatively stagnant across the state. And we settle with tests that basically measure kids by where they ought to be in the 8th grade. And school governance is completely insulated, I think, from taxpayers and parental concerns. And it's a system, I think, that's just not worth preserving anymore. So I would propose that we do what Governor Corzine said he was doing in his new school funding formula. He often said, I want dollars to follow the child. Well, the way this formula is constructed, it worked as per pupil base, but the dollars didn't follow the child. They just went back into the same bad school they started in our school district. So what I would like to see is a system where the dollars do actually follow the child to whatever school that child and his or her parents deem appropriate for his or her needs. Let them determine the choices, and let's see how the public education system responds. Political reform. There are 3 things I really don't like. I don't like holding elections when no one votes. I don't like driving money out of politics for the specious reason of saying that we've now cleaned up the system when clearly it's not. And we have institutions that are immune to reform and really no good way of doing it. So I propose that we hold no election at any time other than at the November general election. That we cease and desist in any more money reforms and instead rely on a system that says we're going to have complete and clear disclosure of money and otherwise let people contribute and let the system work in the best way it can so all special interests can compete on an even playing field. And finally, for institutions that need reform, I am become a fan of some sort of initiative and referendum, even in a modest sort of way. I think we need to draw legislative districts so they're done and we get more competition in these elections. I think we ought to adopt a system like they have in New York, where every 10 years the voters are asked if they want to have a constitutional convention, and if they do, then one is held. And finally, Tom O'Neill was right once when he suggested that we have an elected state auditor or a comptroller. Thank you.
All right. We voted on legislative district competition. We voted on the Constitutional Convention on a regular basis. Complete election law, complete election contribution disclosures, but no limits. If you like that idea, you know what number to push. Survey says wow. Check it out. I think that's the first one of those we had today. Next idea. Only one election a year in November. If it's going to get voted on, it's going to get voted on then. You like that idea? You're voting. Survey says you like it a lot. And having the dollars actually follow the child wherever the child goes, including, well, wherever the child goes. All right? You're voting. Survey says, okay, about 60, well, almost 70% are in favor of that. Our next speaker, Michelle Byers, Executive Director, New Jersey Conservation Foundation. Louder. Yay, all right. Those of you who are left, who I assume are probably in that 13% that we kept mocking all morning, we love you now because you are, if nothing else, loud. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Good.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing I would recommend is that there would be a major shift in attitude in terms of a conservation ethic, and that we ought to really take to heart the issues of prevention and wellness, and all of us look at how we use our energy, our water, and our resources, and consider across the board if we might even consider a 25% cut of what we individually use, whether that would really change our quality of life that much. Secondly, I think I would recommend that we give a much higher prioritization to infrastructure such as water, land, and farms. Those things are infrastructures just as much as transportation. Heard a lot about transportation today. That's great. But if we don't have any water or food, we're not going to be worried about getting in our cars unless we're trying to get out of New Jersey. I would also suggest that we really finally embrace the idea of ecosystem services and the values that they provide. Those are real values. And we integrate them and make them fundamental aspects of the economic equation and all the land use decisions that we're making. And then in addition, I would say that environmental education, to agree with Greg, I think our education system needs some major reforms. If we don't fully embrace environmental issues within our education system, 50, 100 years from now, nobody's going to care about whether land's preserved or not. They won't have any relation to it or understand it. I think that's just a fundamental thing. We've had some reforms in environmental education over the last 30 or 40 years, but I think we're really sort of on a flat line right now in that area. And then in terms of urbanization, I think that's really important. We need to redevelop. We need to regenerate our communities. But those communities need parks. They need water, clean water. They need open spaces. And green infrastructure needs to be a complete integrated part of our development and redevelopment of the state. Every single project ought to have a park, a pathway, a pocket park, a trail, a forest to allow residents to walk out their front door and have this interconnected system. In New Jersey, it's not that difficult to make that happen. It would come with a shift in attitude about land and land ethic and what's important and what we need for our own well-being. We need to continue acquiring land and taking care of that land. So I would say that we've got to find ways, in spite of the economic climate, to replenish the Garden State Preservation Trust, keep preserving farmland and open spaces. In the long run, that will stabilize and have an enormously beneficial impact on our economy. People will come back to New Jersey from North Carolina and other states if we keep making that investment. Looking to the future, we need an adaptive management plan for our coastline. Given what's happening with climate change and global warming, if we're not looking at the Jersey coastline with an eye to how we're going to manage that population base, where are people going to move to when the houses are submerged, when the coastline starts to gradually be eroded? Where are people going to go? How are we going to manage that? So that's pretty much my list. I'd be interested to see how all of you react. Thank you.
Hang on a second. I apologize. I was distracted for the first point you made. It was?
A change in mindset, an embracing of a conservation ethic.
Okay, we're putting that in
conservation meaning to, reduce our own personal consumptions.
Got you. We'll put that with motherhood, okay? But money for water infrastructure as opposed to things like transportation infrastructure, if that matters to you, you know the scale, you are voting. Survey says, okay, you got a big shout out from the group on that, Michelle. Environmental issues in the educational system, we'll put with motherhood. But the idea that every project should have some kind of green infrastructure, a park, something, a pathway, a pocket park, every project. You're in favor of that? You know how to vote? Survey says way in favor. Okay. First time it came up as a specific today, the replenishment of the Garden State Preservation Trust, which I assume you would say means a dedicated funding source. Okay, so dedicated funding source for GSPT. You're in favor of that. In Beijing, they don't know what the GSPT is, but I think they're going to be in favor of it. Survey says way in favor. All right. And as far as an adaptive management plan to handle what's going to happen at the coastline, first of all, if you have some property at the coast you want to let go cheap because the water's rising, I could talk to you later about that because my wooden arrows are going really well at the moment. We're not going to vote on that one, but we are going to call up Ed Wengren from the New Jersey Farm Bureau.
We had the farming and agriculture promotion questions earlier, so I get to change my topic a little bit and deal with something that's important to our community. We're a grassroots organization. Our members set our policies. And within state government, that also holds true within the Department of Agriculture. There's a 8-member farmer board of farmers that run the department in conjunction with the secretary. They make the recommendation of who the secretary should be to the governor, and the governor selects them. The ag community is heavily invested in how well that department runs, how well it works for them, what rules and regulations get considered and passed, because they need to work in the real world. And we think there needs to be a way to bring that kind of government to the other state agencies, to make that connection between the people that those agencies serve and a responsiveness in their leadership and goal setting and program operation. So in the environmental community, at the Department of Environmental Protection, there needs to be a citizen group helping setting those priorities in healthcare, in regular business and industry at our development levels, including, in the case of community affairs, how local governments interface with state government. So that would be one of our challenges. I think we need to bring people and the citizens back into the governing of government. Another one I would like to consider too, or have you look at, is the expansion beyond our two-party system. We live not only in a red state, blue state country, we live in red state, blue state, or communities. Red and blue communities, red and blue cities, where the people who don't feel that their voice is being representative just don't vote. And we need to look at ways to get everybody back into voting and back into being represented in government. So if you have a group of concerned citizens in the state and a Green Party wants to form, if they get 30% of the electoral votes, or people voting 30% vote for their candidates, 30% of the seats in the House of Representatives and our legislature should be dedicated to those people. Same thing if it's a farmer union or a business group. Or I think we need to get away from our polarizing Democrat-Republican and look at ways to get people voting and participating in the government and having that kind of representation. So if we're going to blow up the system that we have because it's not representing people and people aren't encouraged, we'd like to look at ways to bring more people into running government and participating. So those are my two big ones.
Good. We like those. Stay here. Because they were clearly new ideas. So the first is, I didn't know about this farm board thing. Do you guys know about the farm board thing? Oh, you know about everything. That's why you're the co-chair of the event. All right, so take the farm board concept where you have these 8 farmers and apply it to all the other departments. So you bring citizens back into government, so you have the citizen group thing going on across the board in state government. If you like that idea, you know how to vote. Survey says, Marie, you do like the idea. All right. Second thing, the two-party system. I'm going to give you 2 choices. The first would be a totally nonpartisan system, because I come from a little town where it is totally nonpartisan. So there are no R's or D's or all that. We have millions of people in different groups based on who's running. And the second, I'm going to give you, well, first, let's vote on nonpartisan. We make all elections in New Jersey nonpartisan. You voted, survey says. Oh, the first tie of the day. All right, well, don't move to Haddonfield then, all right? The second thing would be to do the, I'll call it the European thing. The percentage of the vote you get for your party is the percentage of the vote you get in the legislative body, and the legislative body is going to elect the head of the government. That's not what you said, but
along those lines.
All right, you get the idea, right? We're Italians now. All right? We're voting. All in favor? Whoa. Son of a gun. Thank you for 2 outside-the-box ideas. All right, now we are at that point. We're at the last speaker in this particular segment, and right, I said we are at the point where we have the last speaker, who is, Tom's just so used to me messing this up today that that was like a prophylactic reversal of what I was doing. So Jeff Stoller, who is from the Heldrich Center for Workforce Development at Rutgers, right?
Great.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think that recent events have made it clear that one of the key roles that the states have to re-examine and elevate to top priority is their role that they can play in terms of creating an environment where there's wealth creation and job creation in particular taking place in their state. And if there's one recommendation that you can put down, it would be, in my view, is to really get the state proactively engaged in what's happening now more informally, which is the employer groups connecting, collaborating, communicating with the key educators statewide, because we really believe that them working together, facilitated by the state, is a real key to getting a skilled workforce that in fact succeeds in what we need to have happening now, which is matching the people coming out of our education and training side to the real growth opportunities, vacancies, real jobs within the private sector. You don't leave it just to the employers and the invisible hand to magically make a match. You don't leave it to our current system of just putting the money into the schools and hoping there's a happy outcome at the end. You really need government bridging those two, bringing them together. Why is this important to New Jersey? Because if you ask a business person who ultimately is going to decide where the jobs are going to be, they are saying that one of the real strong remaining competitive advantages that New Jersey still retains is the fact that this is one of those places where you can find a talent pool of both the low and high skilled people together. That can't be replicated easily other places. And now again, you don't have to put each idea to a vote, but just to illustrate how could this be done, how could the state's regulatory power, its ability to influence curriculum, its ability of the power of the purse. We're talking about linking classroom lessons to real-life examples, real-life economy situations. Supporting and moving away any kind of rules that discourage interaction between the employers and the education side and students, internships, mentorship. And we're not just talking about selected vocational schools or vocational programs. This is for all of the young people coming up. And really, if I could propose anything for the Leadership New Jersey program, you want to see the future of New Jersey's workforce. Spend a day at Passaic Vocational School or Union Vocational School and see the amazing technology and skills that sometimes first-generation immigrant families and their students coming up from some of the poorest neighborhoods in this state, they will blow you away with what they're achieving, what they're learning in a situation where the basic instructions and lessons are reinforced with real-world examples that make sense right in the real world. So I just conclude by saying that a work-focused, a real-world education and training focus really is vital to our future economic development. It is also a very compelling way to teach and to engage young people. It's also a way to help those who are older, who are being retrained, who cannot easily leave the workplace. They're going to be around a lot longer, it appears. They're not going to be retiring. Those pensions and those benefits won't be there. And so it really has great implications. So again, anything we could do to get the state to say, this isn't just a nice idea, this ought to be one of our top concerns. It's a role that government can play, I believe, in a way that's very affordable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. We won't vote on that, but I will tell you it's the first speaker that actually appealed to me because he was talking about older people who need to be retrained, who can't afford to leave the workplace. I'm going to come and talk to you later. I don't know whether there's a spot for me, but I'm hoping that you'll bail me out. All right, we're moving on to the next group. The next group is headed by the sort of substratum keynote speaker. In this case,